All right, thanks for bearing with me. My name is Omar Tawakol, and I'm the CEO of a company called Workfit, and we're just this week changing our name to Voicera. And I love the name Workfit. I thought it was awesome, but then everybody would tell us they thought we were a gym at work. They didn't realize we were productivity. Like, all right, okay, fine. So I'm going to talk about a few topics today. I'm going to first start with talking about a type of AI I think is very important, just generally. And then I'm going to jump specifically into what we do at Voicera, and I'm going to talk about some lessons learned on the path of trying to build competitive advantage and what's kind of different about competitive advantage in the world of AI. So first, if you think about it, I built a company before, and it did pretty well. And then we went out and acquired all these companies and built the Oracle Data Cloud. And there's something interesting going on with AI, and that is that every time you deploy a robot, you displace jobs. And I get on all these kind of discussions with CEOs who are building these companies, and they're a bit defensive about how this is really what they call creative destruction, because you're going to remove some jobs and create some new ones. And it is true. History has proven there is creative destruction. The problem is the path of destruction with AI right now, with robots, is very fast. And if you're one of those displaced workers, it really, really sucks. And so it's really easy for the people in this room to benefit from the creative side of creative destruction, because we're all going to make money in this room. But the amount of people are going to displace is big. So there's this type of AI that doesn't have this problem, and I call it the exoskeleton. So exoskeletons are capabilities that leverage AI to essentially extend the range or the speed or the accuracy of something you do. It's not displacing you. So for example, if you look at long time ago, T9, you were typing text, and all of a sudden it's helping you get to the word faster. Like, nobody's job got removed there. Grammarly, that pops up all the time, writing an email and it identifies some piece of grammar or spelling that was not great. That didn't remove a job, that just made my ability to write better. What we're going to talk to you about in terms of what Eva does is something similar, but X.AI is the same thing. I may be scheduling my own meetings, and then this assistant comes in and helps me do it better. So the characteristics of exoskeletons are, first off, is that they enhance jobs, they don't replace them. And if you're building robots, you may be doing great service to humanity. I'm not insulting you. I'm just saying I'd like to see a little bit more focus on the exoskeletons. So they enhance jobs, they don't replace them. The second one is they're all built on some notion of collective intelligence. I mean, after all, what machine learning really is about is taking millions of human decisions and being able to scalably learn and pull out statistics that's helpful. So why not pipe that collective intelligence back to humans rather than to machines? So that's kind of an underlying piece of it. The third one is it fits your workflow. So there's all these pictures people will show with Iron Man, right? That's not what I mean. That's actually, it's fairly clunky and ugly. We want to build technology that fits like a pair of glasses, right? It's simple, fits into what you do, and you have to think exoskeletons as things that fit into your workflow. And often, but not always, exoskeletons have some component of a human in the loop. And typically these are AI problems where people will talk about accuracy. And they'll talk here about accuracy being 85% or 92%. What they don't realize, it's pretty hard for a human to understand the last few percentage points of accuracy, how that impacts the experience. And typically in many areas, like in transcription and other areas, it's a pretty bad impact if you're not really, really close to 100%. And so sometimes you use humans in the loop to close the gap. So this is what I call kind of the area of exoskeletons. And now I'll jump into what we do. So what we do is we do enterprise voice. We build an enterprise voice assistant called Eva. And really we are enterprise, we're focused on the enterprise, and we're talking about speech in the enterprise. And in particular, where do people spend most of their time talking? In meetings. And that's where we focused on. So if you look at meetings just totally suck. They really do. And we've all come to accept it as like an epidemic. And the problem with meetings, other than kind of just getting the infrastructure right, the dialing, the sharing, and stuff like that, there's like 220 companies doing that. The problem is that people come into the meetings, they open their laptops, and what's happening? While they're opening their laptops, email notifications, text notifications, Facebook notifications, you are literally 20 IQ points dumber when you are multitasking, and everybody's multitasking, and that's the problem. The other thing that happens is you leave meetings without a shared understanding. What are the takeaways, what are the actions, and what are the decisions? So we wanted to solve that. We created Eva, an enterprise voice assistant, and I'll show you the way it works. The way it works, we wanted to make it without an app. And so what we did is we created a solution where you just invite Eva to the meeting, eva@workfit.com, and she dials in. Since there's no meeting right here, I'm just going to dial her directly, and you'll hear.
It's Eva. I'll be taking notes and recording the meeting so you can review it later.
And so this is the first time I demo it live, so bear with me. Live to an audience like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what happens while you're in the middle of a meeting. Okay. And so when you're in the middle of a meeting, you can get a live view of the fact that there's a meeting. And so you can at least get some feedback because we're not on a device and we don't have lights to show you. So you want to be able to see that something's happening. So for example, if I wanted to give a command, I would say, okay, Eva, action item. Make sure to send a box of chocolates to everyone in the audience and charge my competitor. Thanks, Eva. Okay, so what happens is, right away we give a real-time transcript of what was said, and it's a rough draft transcript. It's not perfect. And then what happens after the meeting is, I think I just hang up on Eva, just show you the after experience. So the after experience is the meeting gets processed. While you're in the meeting, you can speak. You can also tap. If you tap, you can go backwards in time or forward in time, capture what was said, get it transcribed. After the meeting, you get a record of the meeting with all the transcripts at a much higher accuracy, I'd call it human level accuracy, because we actually cheat. We run an ensemble of multiple algorithms, and where they disagree, there's a human error correct, and we do that very fast, but not as fast as the real time. The human level accurate stuff is good enough for you to actually just click and send it to email, send it to everybody who was in the meeting, or just some people, or you can push it into Salesforce. And we're just about to roll out a feature where you can automatically push it to Salesforce without ever logging in, have your action items sent, or you get a text from Eva saying, hey, do you want to talk after the meeting? And you call, do a 30-second debrief, that gets uploaded, or you can set it into Slack or Trello. So that's what happens if you give an action item. If you don't give one, we do natural language processing, and you look at it and you say, hey, these things were extracted, commitments, meetings. In this case, the gentleman said something is problematic. You can listen to it.
Problematic.
And it's basically running on top of a search engine. And the X-ray really identifies. I looked at one of my meetings and it had all these emotional responses. It was awesome, awesome, and then something was bad. I clicked in and the awesome was me reacting to myself. That's not really a useful signal. And so you'll frequently find that you want to go back and see kind of the key moments. You also get a word cloud that lets you navigate and search and so on. I'm not going to do kind of a full demo. That gives you the kind of the concept of what Eva can do in meetings for salespeople, or just anybody who has a meeting wants to capture the action items. So just a quick kind of, let me get to the takeaways though. We're in preview mode. Think of it as like an alpha. We're going to be in kind of open beta in about a month and a half. So I'd like to invite everybody in this room. You can get an account. Obviously, it's free. We'd love your feedback. All you do is go to www.workfit.com, Data Driven, put your email there, and then probably tomorrow we'll send you all invites to use it, and please give us feedback. All right, great. So now building competitive advantage. So when I was building BlueKai, we were going after a data monetization competitive advantage, a network effect. And the way it started is we got lots of data. We started out with Expedia real-time data, Kayak real-time data, eBay real-time data, and then we connected the media companies to it, and so it just started taking off. The more data that we got, the more buyers of data came into the marketplace, the more I could pay a data creator a higher dollar value per input of data, which meant I could go attract more data providers, which got me more sellers, and it was a virtuous cycle. And it basically worked. We built the data cloud, and separate of the DMP platform, by the time we went into the Oracle Data Cloud and continued to grow the business and make acquisitions, it was a $500 million business. At the time, people didn't think you could build a pure data monetization business without serving ads. So that worked. But as I build this company, I start to realize that AI has a very different type of competitive advantage. The folks at GGV call this a compounding competitive advantage. And the way that cycle looks is very different. You build an experience, and hopefully it's a great experience, and you get people to start interacting with that experience. So they produce data. And that data lets you now build a better set of algorithms that starts to get more nuanced. So at first you might do, speech, and then you might add to that speech accents, and then you might add to that speech diarization and language customization for the language model of the speaker, and then you can add other languages. So you start to get much more nuanced and better algorithm results, which lets you extend the surface area of what you're doing way beyond your competitors, which then gives a better experience, and you get a virtuous cycle. And it takes years to develop these, and they become harder and harder to catch up with. So I think there's a little bit of a different nature to the competitive advantage if you invest early in building kind of the network effects you get out of an AI competitive advantage. But this is not easy. It's not easy at all. And one of the things that is interesting to me is that it comes back to data again. If you're building great AI, you have to have a fantastic pipeline for the data. So first you might start out by bootstrapping, buying available data assets in terms of voice that's out there, voice over the phone, transcribed voice over the phone, which we did. And then we went out and we bought labels through things like Mechanical Turk. It wasn't exactly Mechanical Turk, but there are services out there that do labeling as a service. Then we run real models out in market, and then you go out and you label your false positives, true positives, and true negatives. Just for definitions, probably everybody here understands that I'm a CEO, and most people here are more technical than me. But false positives, so true positive is I give Eva a command and she recognizes it. False positive is a really annoying event, which you're sitting in a meeting and out of nowhere Eva says yes. Oh, well, you didn't want that, right? She triggered on a command you never said. That's a false positive. And a false negative is also frustrating. You give a command, she doesn't hear it. And so it's really easy to get false positives and true positives, right? Because she responded and you just record it in the database. False negatives are harder, and most companies will do solutions like this and forget to figure out how to label the false negatives. So what that does is it creates some problems I'll show in the next slide. But a lot of the real hard work you have to do in building these solutions is building a pipeline where you're creating your algorithm, and then you're having automated ways of judging the performance of the algorithm, followed by automated ways of running parameter tuning and sweeps to find the right operating point to release the algorithm, and then automated deployment. And all these are like the less sexy part of the AI, that if you build them, they give you a much more compressed learning cycle. Otherwise, you're building an algorithm and you're spending all this time with all these tasks before you roll it out and you learn, and it just slows down how fast you move compared to the competitors. There are also really interesting biases of judgment that people run into. Has everybody seen this example of Abraham Wald's aircraft, where he's a mathematician that was basically asked where should they fortify on an aircraft so it doesn't get shot down? And he had a really interesting insight, because people on the team were telling him, we should fortify all the areas where the bullets are hitting the airplane. Like, why would we want to fortify areas that weren't hit by the bullets? And so what he realized, which is just brilliant, obvious to us now, but brilliant back then, is that the aircrafts that never made it back had a different profile of bullet holes. And they were being hit where there's fuel, and they were exploding, and they're disappearing. So fortifying all the other areas was just like really a bad idea. And so this is called the survivor bias. And you get the same kind of thing if you're running a keyword spotting algorithm, where if you build a new algorithm and you roll it out into the wild, before you roll it out, you're going to judge it, and there's going to be a bias for the new algorithm, making it look better for false positives. And then there's going to be a bias against the algorithm that makes it look worse on false negatives. And the reason is because you never labeled your false negatives, and then you never gave the algorithm an opportunity to run out in the wild and generate new false negatives and false positives. So these kinds of judgment errors are just very commonplace, and that's why you obviously need people in the team who aren't just really good at writing the code, and you also need people very familiar with statistics. And these types of errors of judgment are quite rampant. All right, just summing it up. What we've done is we tried to constrain our problem to a well-formed problem, creating a voice assistant that can be in meetings, identify things that are useful to you in a meeting, like action items and decisions, and capturing emotional moments and commitments. But we found that if we just did enterprise voice in general, it'd be too broad, so we made it more specific to meetings, and then we even found that's broad, so we brought it down to say, let's focus on meetings that have interactions with customers, so we can nail the accurate capture of the voice of the customer, and make sure we can share that throughout the enterprise. All right, I think I made it under time. Thank you all. Join you for questions.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. Any vertical aspects? So you were just talking about the slicing and dicing. Are you thinking of going into customer service for finance or healthcare, or does it not matter in terms of language, I guess?
Yeah, so I wouldn't yet, so we are going to do language model customization by looking at the past meetings and by also allowing OAuth into email and customizing that way. We're not doing a vertical, we're more doing a functional. So we're focused on sales enterprises, people where you have sellers who are doing complex sales, not inside sales. That area is pretty well covered. This is more people who are going out talking to customers and want to get collaboration with the rest of the team. They want the sales engineers, they want the engineers, the product people, and the C-level folks to come in and help them. And if you capture that surface area of conversations, you can create an inbox of conversations that people outside of sales can benefit from, because they could do queries that say, tell me when they mention price, tell me when they mention security, permissions, limited liability, and they can learn the actual voice of the customer as opposed to going through surveys and so on. So it's more of a functional area, starting with complex sales, customer success, sales engineering, and product.
Great. What does a team look like at this stage in an early stage AI company? Is it just engineers and machine learning people?
Yeah, so we're 15 people, one person sales, one person marketing, me, which is arguably overhead, and the rest of it is all engineering. My co-founder ran the applied AI group for Facebook, reporting to Jan LeCun in Palo Alto, so he brought in engineers from LinkedIn, from Apple, from Google, from Amazon. So it's pretty heavy kind of machine learning systems type people. Early on, you just got to nail the experience before you go out and sell it.
How have people reacted to the interaction with the AI so far?
Yeah, it's been good. We have, let's see, we have about 100, somewhere between 100 and 150 users. So it's really early. We're really constraining it, because we wanted to nail the experience. So first month, we went out to a dozen people, and Eva had too many false positives. We nailed that one. Then we found that she didn't do as well with accents. So we've been improving that. And as we build confidence and watch people invite Eva to more and more meetings, we open it up to more users. Me inviting to this crowd would be a big jump to users, because we really want to get that experience well. So to get that experience to be very smooth for you. So please give us feedback. Your feedback is worth its weight in gold.
Okay. Somebody to train Eva with a French accent, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, we are going to need your accent to help us. So thank you.
Very good. Do we have questions? What about here?
Did you build all the components by yourself? Like, for example, the speech-to-text? Are you using some API?
Yeah, great question. So we built an ensemble. The ensemble is built by us. The ensemble takes different engines. So we started out with combinations of engines from Sphinx and Caldi. We found that we could build more engines on top of Caldi. It's a great platform. It's a bit researchy and not friendly, but our guys are pretty tuned to it. And they're built all on different algorithmic regimes, so the ensemble can sit on top of it and learn confidence levels and have a higher performance than any individual algorithm. So we had about 4 of those engines, and then a few weeks ago we added an external engine from one of the big companies to kind of judge it against it and see how we're performing. And we're about to add a 6th engine. So we also use TensorFlow and applications like that to help us, build our own kind of deep learning keyword spotting models. So it's a combination of a lot of the available engines out there, but the ensemble is the way that we can kind of judge when to plug an external engine in and have economic control over if we feel it adds enough value compared to how much we have to pay for it.
One more question here.
Thanks, Omar. It looks fantastic, really pretty amazing. I'm wondering if you I could see possible reactions from people participating in the meeting about knowing that the meeting is recorded.
Great question. It is a, yeah, absolutely. So it's a really interesting social experiment. So first of all, what's happening is, a lot of people are getting used to talking to Siri and Alexa. You know, I heard about some kids who the first, name they used was Alexa. You know, if that happened to me, I might be heartbroken. So my kids were a little older. So it's becoming part of our social conscious to talk to these things. But in the meeting constant, what we're experimenting with is different ways of controlling it. So one way is we're building a command called Eva earmuffs. So just don't record, or Eva drop. Or we want to experiment with a form of audio where it disappears after 72 hours, so people don't have to worry they're building long form kind of memory on them. All these are social experiments, right? Yeah, more Snapchat than Facebook. And the other thing, of course, we announce ourselves in the beginning of the meeting. As you heard, emails sent out by Eva before the meeting starts saying I'm going to be there, and after the meeting. So mainly the people who are accepting us already want this and are able to explain why it's there, but it's a social experiment. And I think there will be resistance from some, and I think other people will like it. And over time, the amount of people resist it will be less, but it will always be non-zero. There will always be situations where you do not want Eva there, for sure.
So one of the things that happens in a social process like a meeting is that the meeting can evolve and wind up in a different place. And what's important sometimes is forgetting what happened during parts of the meeting. And so curating it too carefully could actually be counterproductive to what they're trying to accomplish. So how would you handle issues like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's just all about giving more user control to the edit process afterwards. When we created Eva, we thought that all the experience with Eva would be in the meeting, and we've been surprised how much of it happens after the meeting. And so we see what's evolving here is, I call it a conversations inbox, where you just throw Eva in all these conversations, and then you go back, and you can do search across threads of meetings, so you can see evolution over time of your action items and so on. But we're early in the stage of building more and more capabilities. Like, for example, at one point, you might just want a big eraser and just say, this 30 minutes out, I don't need it. I just want to focus on this. But we're early, so we don't have all the kind of bells and whistles there. But you're right. User control is what we have to give back, so they own what parts they want to curate and what parts they just, want to leave for out of the record or just be searchable.
Are there humans in the loop in this?
Yes, actually. So the ensemble runs, and if you find that 4 or 5 of the algorithms are not agreeing, and you just don't have enough confidence for what's being said, several seconds are cut on a file, and a person hears it, they error correct it, and then you have a record in the future on that sound profile, so you don't have to kick it back to a human. And we end up doing the error correct about 1% of the audio time. So it's cost effective enough and fast enough and secure enough that you can do this, and over time it decreases. And why did we do that? Because those last few percentage points of accuracy matter. If you tell Alexa to play a song and she plays the wrong one, no problem. You tell Eva to update Salesforce and automatically update Salesforce record, and it's the wrong record, there's a problem. That's why we felt like we had to go the extra kind of trade-off where you sacrifice, we give you a real-time answer, but then sacrifice a little bit of time after the meeting, give you a much higher quality answer that you're confident to put in an enterprise system.
Just a quick one. So I'm wondering how it scales in terms of the size of the meeting. So we have 5 people, 10 people, 500 people. And for example, for today, it would be cool to be able to search through this event and find topic of interest. What is the scale that you have in mind? Yeah, so I mean, in terms of handling lots of voices, the first thing you have to do is build kind of ability to handle crosstalk, right? And so, we have some algorithms that are honed in on noise, but they're just not as perfect. Even a human, will struggle with some of these situations. And so what we found in those situations is we need better and better audio to help us do diarization. And there are some companies out there who are at a different layer than us, who are able to 3D map the audio inputs in the room, so it's easier for you to actually be able to separate out the different speakers
so that you can actually do a search that separates out those speakers. We're testing that. We have not gone live with it yet, but we will, and that will help. But currently, if it's a situation like this, it's trivial, right? Because we're not all 500 speaking at the same time. So, so just search will take care of you being able to find the question that you asked for.
All right, one last question, and then we'll jump to Bradford.
Thanks for the very good presentation. Any plans to train Eva to sell herself to customers?
I'll be careful to interpret that. You know, there's a company called Atlassian, built Jira, they built a whole bunch of companies, and personally I'm inspired by them. Like what they did where they made the product that's so damn good that it sells itself, and then you focus on exposure and e-commerce. Totally inspired by that model, trying to follow as much as we can so that we can get some distribution, but then use engagement and virality, because the calendar is essentially and inherently viral, right? Because Eva comes to a meeting, announces, everybody hears it, sends an email to everyone saying this is what you agreed to. So I think there's an opportunity for us to use that virality to have initial growth, and then just use some enterprise sales to say, hey, we noticed 50 people in this company are using Eva, and then sell some more. So there'll be a mix, but I'm definitely inspired by kind of Atlassian's sales model or marketing model. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.